Hello and welcome to another episode of the Integrate This podcast. I am Jeremy Mickle. I'm joined by my co-host, David Berner. And we're joined with special guest today, Jen Hegna. All three of us are actually, even though it doesn't look like it based upon what our rooms look like, if you're watching this on YouTube, we're all at the same conference in St. Cloud, Minnesota. It's the Minnesota Thought Leaders AI Summit, the second annual. And we're really excited to bring Jen into our conversation here today. And I thought we would kind of start out, Jen. Why don't you give us a little introduction about yourself? But if you want to throw in a little bit about the conference or in particular your session that both David and I attended yesterday, and I know you were also part of a panel discussion in the afternoon as well, and had some really great insights, I think, to share there as well. So maybe touch on a couple of those things here, and then we'll get into some other questions too.
Sure. My name is Jen Hegna. I'm the technology director for Byron Public Schools in Byron, Minnesota. Next fall, I'll be starting my 30th year in educational technology for the school district, and have served as the district director for that long, which is amazing. And I kind of laugh because, you know, I've seen lots of technology transformations, like the internet. One of my very first PD sessions I ever had was teaching teachers how to email. And I recall, you know, teachers are like, well, when are we ever going to use this? You know, and that's just the scope, right? There's been internet and smart boards and Wi-Fi and laptops and Google and one-to-one devices. But I haven't seen anything quite like artificial intelligence. And the other thing is how fast it's evolving and what's projected to happen. So here at the conference, it's been great. Lots of ideas. And the whole point of this is geared towards action. As I shared, you know, things are moving quite quickly, and we have organizations, higher ed, K-12, workforce, and we really need to think about how we work together in tackling this. And my passion, I guess, is around human competencies or human skills, because those human skills are going to, you know, help us become more competitive when, you know, the machines are taking over some of the other process kind of things that, you know, traditionally were done by humans. So the session we were at yesterday was K-20 Design Relay. Partnered with some of my new higher ed friends. We actually did not meet face-to-face for the first time until yesterday, which is always cool. But really kind of, you know, thinking about human skills and thinking about students that, you know, have lots of talents and passions, but might not fit the mold for, you know, specific pathways, whether it's college, and thinking about, you know, the learning currency that we all have. So traditionally, learning currency, you know, we have GPAs, transcripts, test scores. And, you know, when we think about human skills, like where do those start being measured in, you know, are transferable to whether going into higher ed or the workforce? And I think, you know, that came up with some really great ideas, and you know, thinking about actionable steps. One of the things I really appreciate about Mingaya is it's a growing group, and we have all of the sectors, you know, K-12, higher ed, and workforce in the midst. So
And
I really
interrupt with Mingaya's Minnesota Generative AI Alliance.
Yeah, yes. Sorry, acronyms.
That's okay.
So, but we have this group of people that I think, you know, if we're all passionate and like we can really help make a movement. And I think we have to. AI is a paradigm shift. And as a 30-year veteran in educational, in schools, right? I've not seen anything quite like it, and it's moving quickly. And how do we make sure that, you know, our students are competitive in these new environments?
Yeah, and Jen, so much of what we did yesterday, because Jeremy and I were in your session that you put on with the different groups that were involved in talking about scenarios. A lot of it was just getting conversations started among different groups or different perspectives. And so if you look at Byron's AI initiative and some of the communication that has to go into even just your single district, so much talk has been around AI guidelines because many of us and don't know where to start. So what was it that motivated Byron to begin developing generative AI guidelines?
I feel the motivation, is one of my skills is futuristic, right? And seeing what's coming. And I wasn't the only one. Educators were feeling that too. And there was this pivotal moment where, academic integrity, they're obviously using artificial intelligence to cheat. But then you see this other side of the coin where, there's really some great opportunities. And last spring, end of spring, I put it on our district operations plan that, we need to form a task force and we need to, come up with some of these, ideas and documents and really deliverables for the district, and guidelines were certainly the main one. And so just assembled a team, did an all call to the district, and the high school educators said, hey, I want to be part of this. And I was really happy to have pretty much a high school teacher from each of the different subject areas. So we had a really great cross-pollination of teachers with different needs and ideas, and lots of great dialogue. And we actually even had folks in our task force, we had folks from St. Cloud University hop on with us. We had Donna Roper from St. Cloud Public Schools hop on, who really, in my mind, St. Cloud kind of pioneered this idea. And yeah, once we set the ball in rolling, I guess we just came up with the guidelines that we have today. So
I think one of the cool things that, as I've looked at some of the work that you have done, and your team has done, really, right?
Yep.
You've focused on, preserving these principles like supporting excellence, and one that you definitely touched on is that human agency piece, and holding on to those things that are authentically human, or the HI, right? The human intelligence that needs to go along with the artificial intelligence. But what I really liked is how your district has a profile of a graduate,
Mm-hmm.
right? And how you've really aligned and meshed these AI guidelines into the expectations that you have for your graduates when they leave Byron, Oh,
I got to move. Sorry.
there you go. Why do you think that was such an important thing to do, to be able to link those things together?
Well, I will tell you, I am so proud of our district and our profile of a graduate. And our profile was established back in 2017-18, which is, that's light years in AI terms, right? Like AI is doubling every 3-4 months or something like that. And for me, that, for us, that was the human competencies, right? So the things that we felt at that time were going to be important for students to, go into these really complex economies. And, generative AI wasn't even a thing. And so when ChatGPT was launched in, November of 2022, and it was like a whoa moment, because it was just so powerful. I've never seen anything quite like it. And one of the things that I noticed was that that the classrooms that we had really embraced the profile of a graduate. And one of the tenets of our profile of a graduate is authentic learning. It's the constructivist kind of pedagogical methods. And in those classrooms, even though they weren't using with students yet, I seen the potential of where AI could be a thought partner, or, a brainstorm kind of buddy, or, really apply and amplify what students were doing. And I think in looking at that, like, whoa, like it was the right work then and it's the right work now. And generative AI just made it come to like, boy, that 6 years of work is like super critical. And so when we put it in the guidelines, we just wanted to demonstrate and how AI could mesh with the human competencies and really accelerate or amplify the learning experience. So yeah, that's pretty much it in a nutshell. Like the POG is something that we are really passionate about, and how we can continue to mesh it with the other tools and technologies is always important. So
It's funny. You say POG, and my brain just as a person of the 90s can't.
Hogs.
Yeah, can't help.
That's another acronym, Profile of Graduates.
Yeah, but it sounds much more 90s rap style of a thing. A little Snoop Dogg or a Nate Dogg, all those kind of.
Everybody had Pogs. I love Pogs.
Yeah, or Pogs. I was thinking more the rapping thing, but that works.
Yeah. So Jen, I think we had mentioned this to you, but the listeners of the podcast will know that we had just interviewed Leon Furze, who was part of making the AI assessment scale, and he's based out of Australia, and then he's working with Jasper Rowe and Mike Perkins, and they've got a number of papers and things around how they developed the assessment scale. How did what you did at Byron, how did that model shape your thinking, especially for the student AI usage continuum? They had gone from the first iteration to the second. What was it about that in particular that inspired Byron to implement that model or use it as a basis for your direction?
Well, I think when we started, talking about the guidelines, there really wasn't a lot of work with students at all. It was right now, it was awareness with teachers, and I think for us, it was what we needed at that time. And the stoplight just resonated with the educators on the team, being able to be like, we don't want AI in this activity, but this activity, go full bore with that experience. And so where we are right now, I think that's why we selected, the first version. It just makes a little more sense as we're building our own literacy, I guess, amongst staff. And so that's pretty much it. And I think it's just an easy way to quickly identify. But I will say this, our guidelines are going to be a living document. So, a year from now, 2 years from now, as we, are moving on and AI is truly the internet of things, right? Because we use the internet all the time in our classrooms, all the time. And so I can see where it's flexible, where we can just, come on to that next phase. But right now, that's just where we're at. And we just felt comfortable with that. And and I think that's okay. That's what I appreciate about Leon having, both of the different models, so that people that want to kind of start slow to go fast, I should say, but start slow, that you have that to look forward. And
I think too, what he had kind of talked about in our interview with him is that it isn't meant to, keep you in one level. For example, it should be something where if you're designing an assessment, there's a variety of ways that you can approach that. And there may be parts of an assignment that lend themselves more to, say, a no AI level, and then some that maybe integrated a little bit more. It could be part of the same assignment, but maybe different pieces of that same assignment lend themselves to AI use as far as students are concerned. And so I think that's that's good.
Yeah, totally. And I can see that, when we were in the early stages, we hadn't been integrating with students. I could see, that, this course is going to be no AI. Well, I don't know if I see that anymore. And this, for right now, teachers have the autonomy to make those decisions, but that's where we have the work cut out for, like, demonstrating, showcasing where AI is going in the different disciplines. I appreciate all of the higher ed educators that are here that, are doing things in teacher prep even, to just really get that literacy down. And I think that's where it'll evolve. But I agree, it's going to be flexible. Some things are like, no, this is a human thing. I want to see the human side of the human skills, where this is like, you know what, go crazy. Do what you got to do to make something awesome.
So one of the first conversations that typically comes up with teachers, and I'm going to probably assume that this is a conversation that happened with the teachers that are part of the Byron staff too, is that academic integrity piece, and the great fear that teachers have that it is just going to be a tool for students to shortcut their learning, or to find a way to just take the easy path, right? So when you think about that, how do you try to get teachers supportive of using AI? Do you think that stoplight framework kind of gives them a little bit of leeway and that helps wrap their brain around it? Or do you have the magic button that you can push to get teachers to be willing to go out and explore and try and innovate and and do so in that safe manner? Don't get me wrong, but still to kind of realize that AI can be a tool that can help be that thought partner for students, not just that crutch that they're going to rely on too much. I don't know, does that make sense?
Yeah, I wish I had the answer. I have ideas. What's really going to be great is the task force that we assembled this summer. We're going to create the toolkit to launch the guidelines. And I think our teachers, really need to be the ones to shape that. It was interesting. I recall a conversation where one of our ELA teachers she teaches a concurrent class. So, students are getting college credit for speech class, I think. And, her conversation with her professor, where they were like, no, you can actually use it to brainstorm, and come up with really great ideas for speeches and storytelling or whatever that was. And I think the more conversations our educators have, and the other big piece is, next year, the sharing of ideas, I think is going to be much more impactful than just, some magical silver bullet. Because I really feel like our educators are the ones that are going to have to pave the way. And all we can do is just showcase, demonstrate, and
Support.
Yeah, and support, really.
And beyond the classroom tools that are implemented at Byron, are there things that you're addressing as well, just in terms of we've had so many conversations about the issues in AI with ethical issues, even just with the AI itself in terms of bias, hallucinations, those have all been big conversation points as well. How is Byron helping to communicate with staff and students about some of those ethical or societal issues?
Yeah, I would say, we've had initial conversations, but it hasn't been to scale that we want, right? So with every session that we do, we highlight, here's some things to think about. Personally, once we started talking about our guidelines and doing some other professional development around accommodations and modifications, which is something that AI is just great for, that coming up with ideas to support students. A teacher, an 8th grade teacher, Mark Stangler, reached out and said, hey, Jen, I have this project, and it's a career research project with 8th graders. I'm thinking about, integrating AI with it. Would you be interested in, helping out? And I'm like, oh my gosh, 100% yes. And so we came up with some really great ideas. So the research project traditionally, they'd look at colleges, how do you want to make a living? What's your, like, you want expensive homes, or you want to live in an apartment, kind of that kind of thing. And then looking for jobs. And while he was in one of the sessions, he's like, I just prompted it and it came out with the research in like 5 minutes. So we got to think of something different. And so we talked about like, okay, well, let's add another component. How is AI impacting that job? And what challenges is that job, trying to solve? Because I honestly think the days of what do you want to be when you grow up are going by the wayside because things are evolving so quickly. And what problems do you want to solve is a better question. We also added an AI and ethics session and flipped the script. And I modeled like, here's academic integrity. And then I said, now for all of you students, here's your topic. You have 30 minutes. I want a presentation and you're going to teach each other how to, about your topic. And the kids just lit up. It was so fun. And we did rapid rounds. It was like speed dating, but speed PD with students around topics like deep fakes, bias, mental health. And while it wasn't deep, I would encourage to go much deeper in these topics. It was an exposure, like using AI to inform, but now I need to figure out how to present this so that it's, relevant to 8th graders, my peers. So that was a great project, but that's the work we have to continue to do. And that's where I'm going to lean on the task force in thinking about bias. Next year, we're rolling out AI literacy in the rest of the high school, 9th through 12th grade. And we're doing it in core classes like ELA and social studies, just because it hits every student. And that's my worry, right? Like this year, 8th graders got a heavy dose, but we didn't do anything for the seniors leaving. They might know how to use it just on their own personal use, but it's really interesting when you kind of coach and show them some of these things. So yeah, I'm super excited for the teachers to stand up and be like, I'm willing to tackle this. And bias has to be one of those areas when we talk about AI and AI literacy, for sure.
What's really cool that I'm hearing that you're talking about here, and it kind of was going to be my follow-up question to this too, is, and here I'll start out by dating myself as well. Next fall, I'll be starting my 27th year in education. So I'm right behind you, but I too have lived through many of these different initiatives that have come down, and this doesn't feel like many of those other initiatives that I've lived through, what you're talking about. And it has to do with, someone comes in, they bring this great idea, right? And your profile of a graduate is this great idea, but if it doesn't follow through, you've got the great idea. If you're not giving people the support they need, the training they need, the practical applications they need in order to follow through with the initiative, with the policy, the guideline, whatever it happens to be, right? And it seems like you guys and your team have really made a concerted effort to make this applicable and find ways that, like you talk about the careers project that allows students to be able to look, which I think kind of opens up a whole new avenue too. And that's a different direction for a different time that I've got questions about, but we're not going to fit into this conversation. But, what other things do you think can be done, or are you planning to do to help make sure that you're giving teachers professional development and also, the actual hands-on experience to the students?
Well, one of the things that I really appreciate, first of all, the profile of a graduate, that was a all hands on deck kind of thing. Administrators, teachers, instructional teams, and I think that's why it's so ingrained. It wasn't just another thing it wasn't just another thing we're going to put on our wall, right? Like we had to have deliverables every year going to the board to show like what we're doing. So that's why it's super important, it's still not perfect, don't get me wrong, but I feel the work that's been done by all of the staff back home is incredible. And as I reflect 5, 6, 7 years of where we were, which was more traditional, to where we are today with these really rich experiences, it brings goosebumps. But having that foundation, right? So having the pedagogical foundation of deep learning, meaningful experiences. And by the way, there's still, traditional things that we need. Direct instruction isn't by the wayside. We still need direct instruction. Quizzes are great for formative assessment. Like all those things still matter, but they're not our end game. We got to think about the end game when we look at our standards. So that foundation of our profile of a graduate is going to just lead to some amazing innovation. And I can't tell you what it looks like because I haven't met with our team, and our team are the ones that we have talked about. But one of the things in our guidelines was district responsibilities. And so each of the administrators, each of the buildings have carved specific time throughout their schedule, so that we can lean in when we need to about these, because it's not a one and done. And so the conversations and opportunity to see each other's work and ideas, I think, is super important. So that professional development is going to be, it's going to be great. We also had ideas, just one more, is finding professionals in the workforce and how AI is transforming. Because we did, that's, what does work look like? Our whole goal is, we have certain skills that we want to have for students, but what does the world of work look like? And listening to Mayo Clinic yesterday, just their teaching and learning and how they're shifting things is just incredible. So I'd love to have that idea of having a panelist of, folks from different industries come and just talk to us about how artificial intelligence is changing the way they do work. So we'll see if that happens. I'm hopefully it will.
And going off that a little bit, that you had mentioned like earlier that the guidelines that came out, all of it is contingent upon conversations with various people within the district. And so with that, how do you have some methods in which you would like to see the conversations continue, or just more getting data back from those within the district, collecting feedback over time as we move into the years down the road? What is your thoughts there?
Well, we consistently, every session that we do exit tickets, just to kind of, get a feeling for, how people are feeling about, the tools. And I just love that, because if there are challenges, like, you can kind of tackle that the next time, or have that conversation with that POC or grade level. So definitely, feedback loops are a significant portion of this. This first round, we didn't have students on our task force. We want to expand our task force to include students and potentially workforce folks. So feedback from students is going to be important. We had talked about, doing students interviews. We do surveys, right? Surveys are great, but I tell you, doing empathy interviews, you can get really deep into, like, what are the issues, if any, or what are the celebrations? That's the fun thing. And it's, typing, is just different. I suppose you could use AI, but I think those empathy interviews, which is a design thinking strategy, like, based on humans, like, how are you feeling? What are you excited about? What's the challenge of the day? And then bringing that back to the team to address.
Right. So as we start to think about, many districts are wanting to pursue or to start moving the needle on the AI guidance and AI policies for their districts. And having gone through this with your team, what sort of advice would you give to schools that are just starting out on their journey of acceptable use of generative AI?
I would say make the journey very visible. Our whole high school and secondary, well, the whole district knew, but we know that secondary is where kids are, starting to utilize AI. Even though I hear fourth graders talking to Siri or talking to Alexa, and Alexa just got a huge upgrade, by the way. She's just a little bit smarter. So having those conversations and broadening those conversations, I think for us having, a teacher from each PLC at the table, and then they can go back and have the conversations with the rest of the members. Just opening it up, I think is very valuable. So I would say I would never have just 4 or 5 people in a room create the guidelines without feedback or anything from the staff. Open it up so you can get people on board to help guide that, because I think so many times things feel very top down, and we need to be partners with our teachers, because they're in the trenches, and they're the ones that are seeing the possibilities and the challenges and having those conversations. And sometimes they're hard conversations, but yeah, so that just make it very transparent and invite people to the party.
Right. Jen, could you tell us a little bit for the listeners, can you tell us where they can go to find some of Byron's work that's been done, maybe looking at the guidelines, and also just, your social medias, things to connect with you as well?
Yeah, I share a lot about artificial intelligence and kind of our journey and my journey as a tech director on LinkedIn, and that's at Jen Hegna. I am on Twitter, but I think LinkedIn is has become kind of the new professional path for learning from one another. So definitely, if you want to connect there, we are going to publish the guidelines under the technology department on our website. And if anybody it's just not quite visible yet, but we need to make it more visible. So it'll be on our tech website as well as under our academic tab, I think, on our website, bears.byron.k12.mn.us. One thing to note too is we did get feedback from our parents, and the guidelines are going to go into the student handbooks for secondary schools next year too. So that they have access, they've seen it, they've reviewed it. But yeah, I would go to byron.k12.mn.us, find the technology department, and you'll find them there.
And I think we can definitely put a link to that as well in the description.
I'd be happy to share the guidelines. And this work, like I said, was St. Cloud, piloted this work the year before, and we looked at their work, and we're thankful that they put a Creative Commons license on it so that we could freely adapt it. We've got a Creative Commons license on ours. So for those districts out there that want to just look and see and, mess around with some of the wording or, copy paste, whatever, we're all working on this together. So take what you need.
Yeah, I love the shareability that you guys have definitely put into this as well. But Jen, we just are so grateful for your time, and we're really appreciate you carving out part of your conference schedule to join us today. And we look forward to connecting with you more here, for the rest of the day today, but then hopefully it continues down the road as well. So.
Yeah, maybe next year when we roll out our first year of it, what does it look like?
Yeah, 1 year later. I love it.
All right. Well, thank you very much, and I hope you have a great conference.
Thanks, Jen.
Thank you, everyone.